Hi, welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm Tina Howard, and today I have Hartwell's power couple with me. I have Richard Sanders and Margaret Sanders.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for coming. I first met you, Margaret, on the Hart County Community Theater Board, and I had just joined the board as a newly appointed member and went into a room that consisted of yourself, Bill Griggs, Walter Gordon, and a table full of really smart people. And I couldn't help but notice that every time somebody asked a question about what should we do if, they all looked at you. And they said, "What do you think, Margaret?" And so I came away from the first board meeting thinking, wow, Margaret Sanders is a theater professional. And I thought maybe that was your gig, that maybe you had been a theater person your entire life and that was all you did. Only later I found out that you have so much more that you do, and we're going to delve into all of that.
Okay.
So many more fun things. And then Richard, I met you at the library, obviously, because I'm still a book girl in the day of the digital age. I still like holding my books and reading my books.
Good. there is something special about just having the book in your hand and feeling the pages.
It is. I retain so much more. I follow a story so much better when I'm actually holding it as opposed to reading on the iPad or the Kindle or something. So I think I'm always going to be a book girl. So I'm hoping books are always going to be around. But just like Margaret, being the director at the library is only one of the many things that makes you interesting. So.
Oh my, okay.
So we're going to get into all of that. As I said, Richard is the library director at the Hart County Library. And did I say the title right, library director?
Yes.
Okay. And that is something that you actually got a master's degree in, master's of library science.
Master of Library Service, yeah.
Service, okay. How long have you been at the library with us?
Last June was 20 years, so going on 21.
That's fantastic. Hopefully another 21 come up.
Oh, right, yes. I want to be 75 and staggering around the library. Yes, I'm sure the community will love that a lot.
And Margaret, soon after you and I were on the board together, I found out that you were also an attorney.
Yes.
That you had a law degree.
Yes.
Do you still practice?
No, I really haven't practiced since our oldest child was about a year old. So that's, she's 23, so I've been practicing 22 years.
Okay. But you're writing, you do a lot of writing, and we're going to get into that too. And you mentioned a daughter, you have other children as well, right?
Right, we have 3.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah. At last count.
Yes, 3 that we know about.
That we don't know.
But I know you have girls. You have a son and 2 daughters, right?
Right.
Yeah, okay, good. And they're all, nobody's little at home anymore, right?
We have a 15-year-old.
So at 15, you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Right.
You're not driving on your own yet, so you're still a little bit dependent on mom and dad. And then the older ones, you have 2 in college, is that right?
Well, our oldest child is a parapro for a special needs for the special needs program at an elementary school in DeKalb County.
Oh, nice. So she's out in a career already.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't want to get into too many.
She's been doing that for 3 years. So.
Okay. That's a respectable amount of time to be doing that. That's good. That's good. And then 1 in college.
No, he is working for Sarah Leon at her restaurant in Anderson.
Excellent. Okay. If you remember Sarah Leon, she had a restaurant here in Hartwell in the Quality Food Center that everybody loved for so long. And she's opened again, this time just over the South Carolina line.
Right.
So love to go and see her sometime over there. So getting back to, you've had family that has grown up in Hart County. If you've been with the Hart County Library 20 years and y'all have been here that long, or have you been here longer than that?
No, I came here for the job when it first opened up.
And where did you grow up?
Mostly in Atlanta. We lived in Macon until I was 5, and then after that it was mostly the northeastern suburbs in Atlanta, Chamblee and Doraville.
Yeah.
And then I was working there when I got the job, when I was offered the job here.
Okay. We are lucky. When you came to Hartwell from Doraville or Chamblee, I'm sure it was a very different experience in Hartwell.
Oh, very.
For a lot of different reasons.
Yes, for a lot of different reasons. Did you want details, or
Sure.
should I just say yes?
Yes. And hopefully a lot of those were good changes, and hopefully.
Yeah, we'll say that. There were some.
Yeah.
Well, eventually, I mean, I got the job under sort of, I won't say controversial circumstances, but they were really looking for a new library director after the other one had left sort of abruptly.
Okay.
And it was a very different experience for me. I had just been a reference librarian at a small branch library in DeKalb County, and then suddenly I'm in charge of a small library in rural Georgia. But it's been a lot of fun, and it was pretty traumatic the first few months for, again, a lot of reasons. I had never been a supervisor. I had never had to write a budget. I had never had to schedule people for anything. And the first thing I had to do was spend, what was it? Was it like $40,000 or something?
Yeah, something.
The library had just received a big materials grant from the state, and it all had to be spent within the first 2 weeks that I was there. And I had never done a purchase order. I had never sent out I had never bought books. That had never been one of my responsibilities at the Doraville Library. And so it's just, okay, here you are. Here's the job. Here's a whole stack of money. You have to spend it by this date, or we lose it.
Wow.
So
Yeah, and he had to sort of hit the ground running and trying to figure out what the collection had and what it didn't have.
Yeah, because you didn't even know. You walked in the door
Right.
and you didn't know what the inventory was.
right.
Or the collection, rather, not inventory. That would be Barnes and Noble if you had inventory. But
Well, the other thing that you had to do that you really didn't want to do was speak.
Oh, golly. Okay. Yeah, I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
Because, being new to the community, everybody wanted to know what I was like and what the library was going to be like. And so I got to do little speaking engagements at Rotary and Kiwanis and the Golden K and the Optimist Club. I don't know if the Optimists are still around, but and I think one of the ladies' clubs, the Pilot Club. I know I did a speech there to say, hi, here I am. This is what the library is like. This is what it's going to be like. I'll want input. So.
yeah. That's really going off the deep end into something because managing people, if you haven't done it, is something totally new. And then tackling your inventory and figuring out what you had, what you needed.
Right.
And doing that under the gun of spending that much money in such a short period of time.
Yeah, that was really entertaining.
Was he crabby around the house at that point?
Well, we were still in Alpharetta.
Yeah, they weren't
children
anywhere
and
close. I was here by myself for several months.
He roomed in.
I rented a room from a lady just down Benson Street.
Okay.
And for several weeks.
Yeah.
And basically I divided my time between that room and the library, and I was mostly at the library. I thought it might have been more efficient for me just to have a cot there at the library, but it never quite came to that. But yeah, that was that. I'd almost forgotten that.
Yeah.
That was tough.
The kids were. Jane had just turned 3, and Will was an infant, maybe 6 or 7 months old. And so he would go during the week to Hartwell, and he would come home maybe on the weekend. And the children would have just gotten into the groove of, we're doing this without Daddy. And then he would come back and
Yeah, chaos for the weekend.
chaos would ensue.
You got to be fun, Dad.
I wouldn't say that. I remember being tired a lot.
Sure. But taking the library from that point to certainly would be the pinnacle of anybody's career, being chosen the Library of the Year by the state of Georgia in 2016, that was impressive.
I would love to take a lot of credit for that, but I really can't. It was the staff that I have or had at that point. We have some really good people, and they were all very enthusiastic about the work and very enthusiastic about working with one another and trying to do a good job. We had some really good times there, and a lot of people making a lot of extra effort for that on behalf of the library, and I really appreciated it. I didn't have to do much. It was mostly people coming up to me and saying, "Hey, how would it be if we did this?" And me saying, "Okay, I'll try and come up with the money for that. Go for it." And it worked really well. I was very, very proud of all of them.
I'm sure you were. But part of that is knowing people to hire and letting them run with things, which you must be really good at the library.
It took a lot of practice. You were talking about the trauma of at the beginning. I will have to say I was probably a very lame manager in the early days, because I hadn't had no training for it. That's not something they teach you at library school. Library school, they teach you, they do a decimal system and how to shelve this and how to, here's the history of this and how to punctuate this and, how to write up a reference card or something. And then, oh, here you are interacting with real people. They teach you how to interact with books, but very few times in library school did they say, the job is not books. The job is people, and you have to know how to work with the people that are, at your library and the public. And I had worked with the public. I'd been a reference librarian at a public library, but I had never been, in charge of a staff, and that was a very new experience. And so, yeah, if I'm any good at it now, there was a lot of practice involved, and there were a lot of mistakes made. I will absolutely stipulate that.
Understood. And Margaret, when you were in Atlanta, when the kids were small, and moving up this way, were you were practicing at that point as an attorney, or just had not? Were you looking to do something when you moved here? Were you asking Richard, what am I going to do there?
Well, I'll tell you, one of my favorite stories about coming up here was I had practiced law in small rural Georgia towns in Jasper and Ellijay and Blue Ridge. So I knew small town North Georgia, and he was here for the second interview, and he brought me with him. I was thinking, I don't know, can I do small town again? I don't know. And so we were driving around town, and we drove down Depot Street, and there was this building with the comedy and drama masks. I said, whoa. Okay, if this small town can support its own theater, which has its own building, I could probably live here. Okay.
So that's interesting. That was your criteria.
That was it, really. I mean, that did it for me.
That told you enough about the community.
Right.
You might want to give it a chance. So you knew when you moved here that you wanted to be involved in the theater.
Yes, it was one of the first things.
Were you always?
She had been in Jasper too.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my next question. Were you always involved in the theater?
Yeah, I started doing theater when I was 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were 12, let's think about that for a second. Where were you living at that point?
In Atlanta.
Okay, so you also grew up in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you were 12, did you have a play in school, in elementary school, or how did you know about the theater?
I went to Pace Academy,
Okay.
and at Pace we had a wonderful, wonderful music director who really taught us so much, but he was directing Music Man, and I auditioned for that, and I can't sing.
I was about to ask, what on
Yeah,
earth did
so-
you do in the Music Man?
I was a townspeople.
Oh, okay.
But, I did the musicals that he directed all through high school.
So you were hooked after the Music Man.
Pardon?
You were hooked.
Yeah. But I learned so much about being a theater professional from that man, from Mr. Nolan. It's stuff that I tell actors when I'm directing today, and stuff I think about when I'm on stage to this day.
Wow.
So it's really
I've actually heard of Mr. Nolan, believe it or not. And I don't know anything about Pace. I just had a coworker who, I can't remember her relationship with him, but she was a coworker of mine who I met him through. And he was renowned through Atlanta.
Yeah, he was.
Because of his skills and and what he
was
brought to
just
the stage there at Pace.
phenomenal. Just a wonderful, wonderful guy.
Did you stay involved in the theater through the rest of your school years into college too?
Yeah. Into college, at one point, I had theater as one of my majors. So, yeah, I did theater all the way through.
That's awesome. And as you know, I'm really late to theater myself. I was too, am too weirded out by the thought of being in front of people. But after 50, you don't care, so you do it anyway. And it's so much fun. And I think, oh my gosh, this is what I've been missing my whole life. So you went to school in Atlanta too, college. You went to Agnes Scott, do I remember that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And moving to Hartwell, did you immediately jump into the theater?
Yes, I mean, we, the kids and I moved up here at the end of July of '98. We bought a house. And in August, I auditioned for a night of one acts and got a part.
Fun.
Yeah.
So see, this is how things work, and they work really nicely. If you see something you want to try to do it, and then you become involved in it, and that's awesome. Because you've been involved as a director, you've been a board member on more than one cycle, I think.
Yes.
And you've also acted. I've seen you in a number of things at the theater. So what's your favorite part of that?
I don't know. It's all so very different. I love directing because I like bossing people around. No, really, it's fun to.
I understand that. I really do.
No, but it's fun to bring all those pieces together. But I also like the acting part and not having that responsibility, just having the responsibility for my piece of it. That's very freeing too. So.
Yeah. Richard, I'm going to go back to you. When you were in school, this could be either school or college or whatever, what were you were interested in library science, I take it. How did you get that path? How did you take the path? Were you a big reader or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was a very avid library user. Mostly I remember most vividly the Chamblee Library. It was in a little storefront in a shopping center in Chamblee. My mom would take us to that all the time. But yeah, and I worked in the library at the elementary school that I went to. I did not volunteer in high school, but I was still a big reader. And then I don't know that I would have necessarily done it as a career. I originally was an art major in college and was not really thinking about being a librarian, but I took a part-time job at the public library, which was like 3 blocks from my house while I was in college. And once I got out of art school and they said, you're extremely mediocre. And as an artist, you would probably be a really good librarian. And so I worked at the library. I got out of school and I said, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I'll just keep working here for a little while and see what happens. And I said, this isn't so bad. What would it be like to just do this? And the head librarian at that library had just gotten rid of the reference librarian that was there had just resigned and to take a different job. And I said, well, I think I'll go to library school. And he kept the reference librarian job open for a year while I went to library school. And then I moved into it when I got out.
That's great.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was really pretty neat.
And your art degree, were you interested in what discipline within art? Was it painting?
Well, it was originally illustration.
Okay.
I'm not much of a painter. God, that's a huge exaggeration to say I'm not even much of a painter. I'm a terrible painter. I'm a lot more fond of line art, pen and ink, and that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I was not really cut out for that. Apparently, I didn't. I don't know. It was I was not disciplined enough, I guess. And,
So when you were a kid, were you drawing?
oh
constantly?
gosh, yes. But anyway, I did not get an illustration degree. I got a more generic art degree with an art history minor.
Okay.
And like I said, I stayed at the library for another year and said, yeah, let's see what library school is like. And I sent out applications to a bunch of library schools, and ended up going to. I'll probably alienate half of your audience by saying this, but I went to the University of Alabama.
I think there are more Bama fans here
There are a few.
than you might think.
Yeah, I hear they have a football team. There was a really great internet meme that I saw one time. It's a picture of a bunch of football players, and the caption is, I went to the best library school in the country, and I hear they play good football too, which I can absolutely relate to. I didn't see the football stadium until the last day I was on campus at the University of Alabama. But I saw all the libraries, and they had like 10 or 12 of them on campus.
Awesome. So were you a comic book person because of the line art? Did you grow up reading them?
Oh gosh,
collecting
yes.
them? You collected them too?
I don't know that was all of it though, but because there were a lot of illustrated books that I really enjoyed the art styles in those too.
Like what were your favorite?
I can tell you, but I don't know if it'll have any reference for you. There was a series of children's fairy tales compiled by a woman named Ruth Manning Sanders, and there was an illustrator whose name is, of course, eluding me because my
Because
brain,
I asked.
right. Robin Jacques.
Okay.
And he did just the most spectacular line art. Just really beautiful, detailed, all kinds of cross-hatching and details. And also another one I liked a lot at the time was Edward Gorey. Big, huge line art guy with lots and lots of detail and a very sardonic sense of humor with his art. But Robin Jacques was just a straight illustrator. He took very specific scenes from the fairy tales and things and did really terrific art with them. And I really I still have some of those books from my childhood.
That is nice. With the art history, were you interested in that coming along? Did you used to watch Sister Wendy on PBS?
No, art history was. I'll have to say, art history was a lot more of a requirement rather than than an elective. That was just something you had to do to graduate. I ended up having to take, I think, two extra art history classes, and I remember very little of them, but it's just what I had to do at the time.
Yeah, I understand that. I took quite a few of those classes myself, physics being one.
Oh my!
Yeah, Margaret, how did y'all meet?
I knew it. I knew it.
Okay, so I was practicing law in Jasper and LJ and Blue Ridge, living in Jasper. And there was
Do we really want to tell this story?
Through the powers of editing, we can always take it out if we want to, but yes, tell it all.
Okay, so I'm in Jasper. There was sort of a dearth of eligible men with teeth. And
Nobody from Jasper's going to see this, right?
right. So I subscribed to the New York Review of Books, and in the back, in the classifieds, there was a blurb for something called Single Book Lovers. I thought, well,
Like a book club.
like,
Well, more like a Lonely Hearts kind of thing. This is pre-internet. Just remember that. This is when people actually wrote
1990.
letters and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 1990, 1991.
Yeah.
So
The Dark Ages.
the Dark Ages. So I joined up.
I have no memory of anything that happened after that.
Anyway.
So you went to the first meeting?
No. It was a correspondence
It
thing.
was a correspondence thing.
You could you would fill out a little form about yourself.
Yeah.
And the premise was that if you like similar books, you might get along as a couple,
Sure.
kind of thing. So you would fill out this thing with the kinds of books that you liked, and a little bit about yourself,
Yeah.
and you would send that in, and then for a small fee, each month you would get a little bundle of people's profiles, and you say, okay, well this person, he likes admits adventure novels. No, forget him. Just that kind of thing. You'd run down what sort of stuff they like, and if you liked them, you could send to the company, and they would send you a complete profile with the person's mailing address,
Sure.
and so you could start writing back and forth, and that kind of thing. And so I've forgotten. Did you write to me first, or did I write to you? I think you wrote to me.
I think that's right.
I think you did,
I think that's right.
Because the funny thing is, our book tastes are incredibly disparate. There wasn't anything in common except Robert B. Parker,
Except for,
the late Robert B. Parker, a great American writer. I had to say it.
Yes, of course.
So anyway, we had nothing in common in the list except for this one thing, and so she started writing. She wrote to me, and we started writing letters back and forth. And how long did we go just writing letters before we even dared to make a phone call to one another?
It was probably months, and then
we were shy.
We were shy. Then we started talking on the phone, and at the time, I was directing a play in Jasper that had been written by a local playwright.
Playwright is a huge exaggeration.
Okay. Beside the point. And this guy was making me crazy. Just making me crazy. So
Not me. She's talking about the playwright, not me. I was not making her crazy.
No, the playwright. And so I was whining to Richard all the time about it on the phone when we talked. And so he said, well, you know what, I think I'll come up and see the show.
You went,
Oh, okay. So I immediately called a couple of my best friends from Atlanta from college and said, y'all have got to come up here. And
This strange guy is coming up to see my play.
And I was having to be backstage as the director a lot during the show. So, I didn't want him just sitting there
had you exchanged photographs?
by himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would
I
know.
sent
Yes.
him actually the news blurb that had been in the local paper about the show.
Okay. So you would know one another on site if you were.
Sort of. She didn't mention how tall she was at the time. The picture she sent was a group shot with her standing on a chair in the back or something, and so I thought, oh well, maybe she's like a taller person, and yet it was very.
stand up.
I'm sorry, that was very funny. It was very funny when we first
Because
met.
you were looking around. Oh.
Well,
And you saw his photograph, so were you peeping through the curtains?
a little bit.
Well, the funny thing is, I met her friends before I met her. They were screening me.
They were
Yeah,
screaming,
they were.
here's the picture,
Yeah.
be on the lookout.
Yeah.
And they came and
Exactly.
found me. So technically, I've known her, two of her best friends longer than I've known her.
Oh, funny. So they came up to you. Do you remember what they said?
Not specifically. Just,
Hey, are you Richard?
Something like that. And we have seats over here, and you can sit here with us. And Margaret will come out and see you at intermission or something.
Yeah. And so I walk out, and he's sitting down and, shook his hand or whatever.
And then I stood up.
And up. And up.
You were way up here. Yeah.
And it was the last night, so we had the cast party afterwards, and I invited him to come to the cast party.
Because nothing says, hey, it's great to meet you. Like, here, be in a room full of strangers for 2
Right.
hours while they, yeah.
Well, we talk about our great play, and you have no idea what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So we're getting ready to go to the cast party, and he said, well, do you want to just go in my car? And I said, sure. And then we're driving along, and I'm thinking, what have I done? I mean, this guy could be an axe murderer. And about that time, Richard says,
Just so you know, I don't have like a chainsaw with me or anything.
at that point, I figured it was probably okay. And then the next day, we were striking the set, and it was raining, and the Tater Patch Players, the Jasper group, does not have, or at that point did not have its own building. So we had to strike everything and take it to a rental building. And so we're at this storage facility, and Richard's there, and it's raining, and he's just being such a good sport, just helping us. And
What a trooper. That had
yeah,
to
what a
make
trooper.
an impression.
And
I'm trying to impress a girl. What do you want?
yeah, and I'm looking at him, and the raindrops are just on his lashes, and his lashes are out here.
Oh, thank you for sharing that one.
And you thought, oh, be still my heart.
Yes.
Aw, that's such a great story. I hope you have all the letters
Yes,
that you wrote.
Yes.
Good.
It's a big old stack. We wrote a
It is
lot.
a huge set.
You could make a book with it.
Oh, dear God. No.
Okay, no.
There's a lot of them and they're sappy. So no.
That's okay. That's all right. That's good. Well, that is a great story. I'm glad I asked that question. So, and that was in the early 90s, back in the dark ages, before cell phones. So you must have run up quite a long distance, Bill, because Jasper and Atlanta were a long distance at that point.
Actually, they're not.
Oh, they weren't. So you were able to
Yeah.
talk for free.
I have no memory of that. I don't think I ever sat and said, wow, this is really running up my phone bill. It was more like, hey, a girl's talking to me. Woohoo!
That's so funny. So, had you had any experience with theater prior to?
A little tiny bit. I was in the drama club in high school, and we were in a couple. I was in a couple of little short plays. Nothing major. It was definitely not a huge part of my life. There were some friends of mine that were in the drama club, and they said, "Hey, why don't you hang out with us?" And I said, "Sure." So
It's always fun in high school.
yeah,
It's in the drama.
yeah,
club.
it was fun, but it was not. I would not call it a major factor in my high school career.
It doesn't go on your bio.
No. I was
And
waiting.
then you embraced her love of theater at that point, right?
It was years later.
I was
years
going to
later.
say,
It was
yeah.
years later.
Well, because that was a bad one to start me off on because the writer was kind of a. Well, never mind. I don't want to be. I don't want to be going on
Not
record
ideal-
saying something
not
ugly
ideal
about him.
circumstances.
But yeah, and the play was not all that great. Although she did a fabulous job directing, just amazing.
Yeah. But flash forward to, gosh, what year was it? Was it 90? Oh, probably about 2000, 2001.
What, for To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you here in Hartwell?
Yeah.
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 And there were auditions for To Kill a Mockingbird, which is one of his favorite books. I mean, who doesn't?
It's on everybody's short list, yeah.
But I said, you really ought to audition for that play. And he said, well, maybe I'll get to play the sheriff or something. And he
no,
auditioned.
And who did you play?
I got to be Atticus.
Whoa,
Yes.
you jumped right up to the top.
Oh
Yes.
God, yes.
Samantha Kelly was
scared me to death.
Yeah,
But he did it. He was fabulous.
I'm sure you were. I've seen you in some
You want to tell
things.
your great story?
I can tell you my great To Kill a Mockingbird story.
Okay.
I was on stage, and it's the scene where Atticus has to use the shotgun to kill the mad dog. And I put the gun up to my face and somehow managed to knock the contact lens out of my right eye. And I am extremely nearsighted. So I'm sitting there, oh God.
Well, you also have to know that he's so nearsighted, he can't wear flexible lenses. They have
So
to
it's
be
a hard
the hard.
lens.
Yeah,
How do you pop a lens? Anyway,
I've been doing it since I was 12. You get used to it. So anyway, the lens has popped out of my eye. And I'm momentarily panicked, but the show must go on. Got to finish the scene. So we finish the scene. It's toward the end of the scene, right? So I go off stage, and I tell the people backstage. I said, I have dropped my contact lens, and one person says, is it still on you? And I said, I don't know. It could have been stuck to my coat or whatever. So I've got an entire squad of people feeling me up in the back. Just, are you, is it on you? Where could it be? I'm like, oh, it's not there. And so I'm looking, and miraculously, I look out on the stage, and I can see it. It's still out there. There's a little glint of light.
Wow.
Where the lens is.
with your good eye.
With my good eye, I can see it, and it's out there. But I can't. But I'm not in that scene. and there are people running back and forth across the stage.
Cast of
right
thousands.
there. Cast of thousands running back and forth across the stage. There's my contact lens. I can see it right there. Somebody's going to stomp it into oblivion.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Miracle.
My next scene that I come on stage, there it is. So I step up and I'm talking to the sheriff, and the sheriff says something, and I said, "Hold on just a minute." And I lean down, I lick my finger while I'm bending down, stick the contact lens on my finger and hang on to it. And when I get off stage again, I just stick it back in my eye and go
Wow.
on. But
Boy,
the idea
that's-
that it survived all of that, stomping and running and everything from everybody else, it still amazes me.
It does. And I don't know how you could remember your lines and your placement and all that while you were thinking about, I've got to get this.
I was younger then.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Okay, so we've gone through childhoods, college, how you met, career paths, and things like that. You're both involved in some interesting things as adults that perhaps grew out of things in childhood. And yours is martial arts.
Right.
And so how did that start?
Well, I don't know why. Maybe seeing Bruce Lee and Batman as a kid. I don't know. But I've always sort of, in the back of my head, wanted to do karate. And I noticed contemporary martial arts. At that point, it was on Howell Street. And I kept seeing the sign. And I called up and took the kids. They were like 4 and 6, I think, at the time. And so rather than sign up myself, I signed them up first.
Let's see how this works.
Yeah, let's
See how they like it.
put the kids out there. Let them be canaries.
Which they probably love that.
Jane did. I don't know that Will was quite as enthusiastic.
Although he went back and took some classes later, years later. He did that.
Well, he continued
Okay.
to take them because I need him. But
He's not going to be watching this, is he?
I walked into the karate school, and there's this young guy with long hair. Just this hippie. And I'm thinking, I don't know. But he was just this amazing teacher. I'd never seen anybody teach anything, I don't think, as well as Chuck can teach.
Oh, great. He's going to love that.
Well, it's true. And so I signed up to take kickboxing with Carolina, and then got into the best shape of my life, and immediately found out I was pregnant.
Doggone it. Just gotten my body back.
Yeah. But I had the baby, and then that was in May, and I started taking karate myself like August or September after she was born.
Well, that's awesome.
So,
And you really enjoyed it. And was it unlike anything? Did you grow up doing sports?
no.
No?
I was about to say,
Absolutely not.
you didn't have any kind of experience before that. You didn't do any karate classes or anything before
I didn't
going
do
to
any
contemporary
karate.
martial arts.
In college, scraped by every PE course with a C.
So what do you think it was about martial arts that was so different?
Well, I think, for one thing, martial arts really, really challenges your brain.
Okay. So it's mental as
It's
well.
a very mental kind of thing, as well as just being a physical thing. And I've always been strong, but I had never focused on it. So that was
Your strength was there, but you had never really tapped into
Right.
it.
Well, she's also very disciplined in her daily. I mean, just everything you do, you're a very disciplined person. So I think that's probably a big attraction to it too.
That's true.
Yeah, because it is a very disciplined kind of thing. But a lot of it had to do with the school itself. Just Chuck and Carolina have just a really great school, and there's a great energy there.
That's great. And you went all the way through. You started with kickboxing, and then you are. Am I right that you're a black belt
Yes.
in?
Well, Chuck teaches, the karate he teaches is a combination of Shotokan and Kyokushin. But he also teaches alongside with that, he teaches a lot of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and Judo. So he has two different black belts. He has one that you can get that's just the karate element, and then one that's the karate plus elements of other martial arts. So my black belt is in the what he calls a CMA black belt, which is the karate plus elements from other martial arts.
Quite an accomplishment, I think, to go, because I've
Yeah,
seen what's required. Most people start, but it's a process. It's a very long process.
it is a process, and for me it was probably twice as long as for everybody else. Just
Well, gee, I
because-
don't know why, mother of three.
Yeah,
It's just because she's short.
that's it. It's entirely related to size. If you're 7 feet tall,
Yeah, you just waltz
Yeah,
right through
right.
it. But under 5 feet tall, you have to do. They make you do twice as much.
I have to say, one of the things that Chuck has said to parents of the little dragons, he'll just be talking to them. I'll be in there teaching my class, and he'll be chatting up the parents. And one time he said to them, there is now scientific evidence that the best karate teachers for small children are under 5 feet tall. And so he's got parents going, really?
That's funny. And so you are the kids call you coach. You do direct the Little Dragons
Yeah.
program, which is the children's portion of what
3 to 8.
3 to 8. Okay, well that's cool. That's cool. Now, Richard, you're I don't know if I want to call this a hobby. You're director of volunteers at DragonCon. Okay, did that grow out of love of comic books?
No, it grew out of a love of. I hate to say this on camera too, because this is geeky as anything. Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, that's not geeky at all.
Oh no, not a bit. No, not even a
So
little.
that was one of the things you enjoyed.
Yes. When it first came out, I was, I think, 12 or 13, and I missed out. The first year it was out, I didn't know it. I had no idea what it was. But then some friends of mine started playing it, and then I started. And the thing with DragonCon was that we had there was a group of friends of mine that we played Dungeons and Dragons a lot.
Now, how did you play that before the age of the internet?
It's the same way you play it now. You have books and paper and dice and pencils and stuff. Internet. You don't need the internet to play Dungeons and Dragons. Oh my God.
Okay. So you have neighborhood groups, I guess.
Well, in our case, it was.
Clearly, I never played
there were like 4 of us that lived within a few blocks of one another, and we would go to each other's houses and play Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
But the thing was that as we got a little older, this was when I was in college, some of my friends said, "Hey, why don't we try and start up a small gaming convention?" And we'll rent some rooms at a hotel, and we'll invite people in to play games, and charge them a little fee for it and everything. And they did that on a very small scale for a couple of years. But they also we also ran games, and I did this too. There was a convention before DragonCon called the Atlanta Fantasy Fair, and some of my friends and I ran Dungeons and Dragons games at convention. And actually, I'll think about it, that it grew out of that. It was the fact that we had been working for a convention, and somebody said, yeah, we could do this on a small scale and maybe grow it into something. One of the big regrets of my life was that my friends got together and said, well, we're going to start this convention. Would you like to join in and be a founding member of the group? And they said, you just have to contribute a certain amount of money. And I did not have the money at that time, and I was in college and working part-time, and was actually very proud of myself that I was putting myself through school.
Yes.
But I did not have a whole lot of extra money around, and I did not want to borrow anything off my parents. So I said, no, I'm just going to I'll have to pass, but I'll help you out, whenever I can. So they started the Dragon Con Corporation kind of thing.
You are kidding.
I could have been in on the ground floor of Dragon Con, and now it is a big deal with, what do we got, nearly 2,000 volunteers. And the last 2 years, we've run about 80,000 attendees at 5 hotels in downtown Atlanta.
Is that bigger than the Super Bowl?
Oh gosh, no.
Because what is the Super Bowl? 100,000 maybe?
Oh, lots and lots more than that, I'm sure.
That's big, though.
It's
that
pretty
could be
big. It's one of the biggest.
football stadium holds that many.
It's not as big, not quite as big in terms of numbers as San Francisco or San Diego Comic-Con. That's that's what everybody asks. Is it like Comic-Con? Not exactly. It's kind of a different vibe to it. But there are a lot of devoted fans, and we have lots of people who volunteer for it. And I've been doing it for a long time. I started off doing in the gaming section, and then have went to work, I think, like 12 years ago for a friend of mine who was in charge of the volunteer section, and then he moved on to be in charge of a different department, and they gave that to me. And I've been doing that for like...
That's a big job. Coordinating all of those.
It kind of can, it can take a lot of your time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have
But how fun, though. Do your kids like it, too? Do they...
No. And ask Margaret if she likes it.
Oh.
I went once.
No.
When the year we got married?
It was the year we got married.
Because you're such a good spouse at that point. You're like, sure, I'll try
Yeah,
that.
we were actually not married. We were getting married.
Oh, right.
And I went, and afterwards said to him, okay, I don't have to do that again.
The things you do when you're first together. Bo went with me to an Annie Leibovitz exhibit at the High Museum. Oh. And I thought, a guy who will go do that with me. And then I watched Braves games with him on TV. That didn't last. Either one of those. So funny the things that you do. So you went once and you said, not for me.
Yeah.
Don't get it, don't understand it, don't enjoy it.
Right.
See, I thought there might be a little bit of crossover between theater, costumes, role-playing, acting. Nope.
In this particular instance, no.
Okay. Well, that's all right. I still can go to the museums, and Bo can watch baseball, and we're okay with that.
Yeah.
He goes to Dragon Con.
I go to Dragon Con every year, and I don't see her for about a week.
It's okay. It's okay. But can you imagine, would that be your job now if you hadn't been on the...
Oh, no, that's still... well, I don't know. Maybe
you put your money in
a couple of my friends have had regular jobs, but there's at least one that Dragon Con is pretty much his job.
That's his job. I look at the pictures every year in the paper. It's just fabulous costumes. Where in the world do people get the costumes that they wear?
Well, with all the new technology that's available, like 3D printing and things, people can make all kinds of stuff. It's amazing. There are guys I have seen at least 3 extremely accurate complete sets of Iron Man armor. Guys are showing up in costume that looks like they came just straight out of the movie set.
Wow.
And it's all 3D printed, or there's foam carving that you have this this sort of stiffened foam that you can use and carve it into all kinds of shapes and paint it, and it looks like any kind of superhero costume or medieval armor or whatever that you want to make.
That's cool. So I think we've covered pretty much all of the career and the hobbies and things like that. Margaret, you are also a writer, you told me, and you have written a lot of things for homeschooling, guides for homeschool.
Right. I homeschooled our older children. They're both hearing impaired, and I was very concerned that it would be difficult for them to learn to read in a traditional classroom setting. so I homeschooled for a while, and I was part of an online community. And one of the members said, "You know what? I'm going to start a publishing house for homeschool materials." And I told her, if you ever need anybody to write anything, especially for history, because that was my major in college, I said, let me know. I'll be glad to help you out.
That was great because the homeschooling was just really starting to take off at that point.
Yeah, this was like 2000, 2005 in there. And she contacted me a couple of years later and said, I need somebody to write a history guide for like 5th grade. And these are the books I want you to use, and this is the basic format. And so I wrote that for her, and then she came back the next year and said, I want to do an art history course. And so I did that, and with that one, I actually wrote a lot more because we had a basic text we were using, but it was very slim. And so with every chapter of that book, I would write 2 or 3, maybe 1,000-word essays about specific genres or artists
Wow.
or whatever.
That's a lot. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Yeah. It's not just organizing, but it's really exciting.
Physically writing.
Yeah.
She's very disciplined.
Yes. Yeah, I believe that. Have you done creative writing too?
Yeah.
Besides your letters to Richard?
Besides the letters to Richard.
Thanks for that.
Plays and things like that?
High school and college and a little bit beyond, I wrote a lot of poetry and short stories. I've had some published, but it's been 30 years. I'm trying to get back into it.
It still counts. That's good. Richard,
Yes,
do you
sir.
have a movie? We're going to the random questions part now. Do you have
I was about to say, no, I have not made any movies. What do you?
do you have a movie that you like to watch over and over?
Yes.
Which one is that?
Well, there's actually a lot. I watch a lot of movies over and over again. Bull Durham is one of my absolute favorites.
Bull Durham. Okay.
Yes,
I
which
would
is
not
really
have
funny
guessed
because,
that.
well, a lot of people wouldn't because I'm not a sports person at all. But for some reason, I have a sneaking fondness for baseball movies, and Bull Durham is just the best one ever.
That's awesome. I have
Actually-
a few that I watch repeatedly, but it's more like When Harry Met Sally type funny stuff. Just,
Yeah.
Silly.
I actually
that's
made a
a classic.
pilgrimage. I actually made a pilgrimage to Durham, North Carolina, one time to see a Bulls game.
Wow.
So I have an authentic Durham Bulls baseball cap at my
That's
house.
awesome. That's good. That's a good answer. And you didn't even know I was going to ask that.
No, not a clue.
Okay, how about your, what's your favorite old person thing to do? Do you have an old person thing to do?
Oh, crochet.
Yay! Okay. That's good. Are you really good at it?
No.
Pot holders everywhere at home?
Yeah. No, well,
No, she's so disciplined. There are Afghans everywhere.
Or, I was going to say, maybe you crochet them and then you pull them out and start over.
The cats do that.
Yeah.
The cats pull them out and make her knit them over again.
That's good. All right. Richard, who do you go out of your way to be nice to? It could be
Besides
one person.
Margaret?
Yes, that's a good answer. That's a real good answer.
It's always a stretch, too. Yes. I don't know that I go out of my way to be nice to.
Polite, maybe. To exceedingly polite.
your mother.
That's another good answer.
Oh, that's, but that implies that they're, well, I'm not really comfortable. I don't want to name a name and then have them say, really? You're just being polite? I thought you actually liked me. No, I'd rather really not. Well, I mean,
I'm polite to older people because I have this sympathy, I think, for the elderly.
Well, I mean, it's part of my job. I have to be polite to everybody. I mean,
that's
I mean, I
true.
interact with the public every day, and there are days that you you're in a bad mood, or you had no sleep the night before, or stuff is going wrong left and right, and somebody comes up and says, can you help me find a book? And you want to say, get out of my face, go away, don't come back, and you don't. You say, sure, just what do you need? How can I help you? Where's the
Last time I was in the library, I said, can you help me find something to read? To you.
But I was not in a bad circumstance at that moment.
Good, I'm glad. Well, you were awfully nice.
It was no effort to be nice to you.
Thank you.
And most of the time it's not. But I'm just saying there are times. That's true of any public job where
It's true.
You're just not allowed to show that you've had a bad day.
That is correct.
And sometimes I've slipped with that. That's when we were talking about sort of evolving into the job. There were times when I did not realize that losing my temper in front of somebody would be a really, really bad move, and
We all learned that, right?
Yes.
Margaret, what activity have you not tried that you would like to try?
Oh. I've never been snow skiing. I'd kind of like to try that. Not now.
Not now.
Maybe wait till your knee heals.
Yes. Margaret and I have both had ACL surgeries this year, so you're walking really good, by the way. But when the knee heals, maybe that's something on the list.
Yeah,
I will watch. I will absolutely not be involved.
That would be good. Okay, Richard, if you had an all expenses paid trip anywhere, where would you like to go?
How long could I go for?
You tell me.
Margaret and I went to England in 2017 for our 25th anniversary, and I loved it. I would go back to England again in a heartbeat.
You go back to England? Yeah. What item is incredibly cheap that you would be willing to pay more for? I have two answers to this that come to mind.
Okay, tell me.
Eggs, right? I mean, and bananas, as long as we're on the food.
Okay,
they're incredibly cheap, and I love them both. So I would be willing to pay more for bananas and eggs. That's just me.
I would probably pay more for a nice pen.
Oh, yeah. Pens are underrated because there are a lot of cheap ones that are horrible. Yeah. I agree with that.
I'd go in more that direction too, rather than eggs or bananas.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay. I mean,
I don't like eggs.
I don't like.
Oh, you don't like eggs?
No.
Eggs can be a penny. I don't care.
All right, I got one final question. I can't believe we've eaten up the whole hour. This is fun. Okay, rank these three things. I'm going to ask you both: peace, love, order. What's most important? Rank those in importance. Peace, love, and order.
I'm going to say love, peace, order. But the love and peace, they're neck and neck as far as I'm concerned.
That's really hard as a librarian. I really like order. Order is such a good thing.
My husband thinks the same thing, so order is really important to him. He has peace if he has order. Whereas for me, I'll sacrifice a little order.
Right. Yeah, but then again, you can impose order, and you won't end up with love and peace lurking around. But you could have love and peace, and order could still follow it. So I would. Geez, right now I'd go with peace first. Honestly, first. Peace, love, and order.
Peace, love, and order. Okay. All right, and you were love, peace, and order. And your peace, love, order.
I think dads value quiet more than...
Yeah.
That is true.
That's entirely possible. I don't know what else we can talk about, but this has been so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah,
and
we've had a great time.
I was going to say, I think I meant to say this from the very beginning. Power couple, really?
Yes.
I really don't see that, but thank you.
Yes, probably the yeah.
Well, okay.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you
for coming on today. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing the both of you. All right, and thanks everybody. That was fun. Join us next week on Community Conversations. We'll see you then. Thanks.